Oh
me, like,
yeah.
do you know how
Oh
much
yeah.
work that's going to be? That's going to be such a commitment. It's going to be such a challenge. It's, all of my fears were coming up. It wasn't just like the technical aspect. It was also the fact of nobody's going to want to listen to you. Nobody's going to want to
God,
hear your
yes.
voice. Like, who do you think you are? You're no expert.
Yeah.
So
The
there was a
imposter
lot of
syndrome.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of that going on. So this is what will normally happen. We create the space for ourselves. We ask ourselves these important questions. It's like we know what we want, we know how we want to feel, but then we start to hear all those voices creep in.
This is Girl Take Note, a podcast for women who are looking to turn their dreams into reality. Kristi, welcome to Girl Take Note. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, this is a different type of conversation for me because a lot of times I do life coaches who just deal with adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because I do know about teenagers, I have my husband has two older kids. So my bonus kids, two older bonus kids are teenagers. And so it's a different kind of world. It really is when it comes to teenagers and just watching the transition of like nieces and stuff like that. So you were a teacher before. So I'm excited to have this conversation. And you transitioned into doing like a teen life coach. What inspired you to make that kind of shift? And how do you feel your experience, I guess, in the classroom kind of prepared you for this experience?
Yeah, it feels like a really big question right now. So I'm going to try to make this short and sweet. But what really shifted everything for me was motherhood.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So that was really what broke me.
Yeah.
And I say that because I really did have like a lot of armor up pre-children.
Mm-hmm.
And I did suffer from some addictions and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And it was really, really hard for me when I got pregnant to kind of like release all of that. Not just because it was a challenge in itself, but it was also, I didn't realize that I was starting to challenge like my identity and the person that I
Mm.
was. And that ran like a lot deeper.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I ended up having my son and my daughter pretty much back to back from 2020 to 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was also during the pandemic. So there was just a lot going on during that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, it
And
was.
I joined a coaching program in the midst of all of that during like my maternity leaves. And I started to do the work on myself.
Oh, yeah.
I started to really go on a healing journey, kind of healing some of the things that I needed to in my own life in order to start showing up to be better for them. Because that's one of the questions that kept coming up for me. Like, how am I going to show up for them like the way
Yeah.
that I want to when I don't even know that version of myself?
Yeah. Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit, I was still teaching part time through all of this, but a series of mental health breakdowns in that mixture
Mm-hmm.
just really kind of push pause on everything for me and force me to really look at what it was that I wanted to continue doing for the rest of my life. And I
Yeah.
knew that like coaching had been such a transformative and powerful experience for me. And a lot
Yeah.
of the things that I learned through coaching and just through meeting other people and having mentors and other teachers was that like there was just it was like I was learning this new language. I was learning the language of self-love, confidence and empowerment, and I was honest to God shocked, and I think this is where another shift happened. Like I
Yeah.
was shocked that I didn't know this language before. And so I was learning like these essential life skills, and really truly the most important was like everything to do with like emotional intelligence
Yeah.
and how to really harness my emotions for good. And again, this is something that I'm learning like after I became a mom.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
thinking back to myself in my teen years, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like if only I would have known so many of these essential tools, these strategies, like this way of really co creating with myself, with my body, and really
Yes.
having a deeper understanding of that was something that I then realized that wasn't really, it's kind of like I seen it as a gap in the
Yeah.
traditional school system and something that wasn't being taught. And then I had parents that were finding me and they were, searching for this type of work for their children, like really
Yeah.
leading them back to this language of empowerment and confidence. And so that is when I stepped into my role. And I do believe that, teaching really laid the foundation for this work. Like I'm really starting to see how everything that has happened to me in my life has really, it's all kind of starting to come full circle now.
Yeah.
I'm always saying that the challenges that I see now that I faced back then were really happening for me in order to guide me to getting to this place where I am now. So that is what I do. I help teens and I lead youth back home to this language that I never knew before.
Yeah, it's so much. When I think about when I was young, I'm 49. So when I think about when I was younger, a lot of growing up wasn't, I think I look at today's society where kids are just so much like they understand what mental health is. They understand when they need breaks and they just understand, like I said, their emotional intelligence is so much higher now. When I was younger, it's like a lot of things I went through was just like, we just chalked it up to childhood, right? Our parents didn't sit down and talk with us about our emotions. It was almost as if you don't get the right to have emotions. I tell you to do something, I don't care how you feel about it, you do that, right? That's really how it was back then. So we didn't have a lot of those tools and things and resources, and we didn't have the internet and things that kids can pull from in order to understand what those feelings are. Because I have a young niece and she's very emotional. Like she has ADHD and she's really emotional. She feels like when she can't do something right, she completely shuts down. And I was talking to her one day and I was telling her, I said, you can't shut down. You just want to try. You don't have to be perfect. And she said something that was just like, kind of just blew my mind. And she was like, she's like, well, my mind, it makes me not want to stop and I can't help myself. And I just feel like she's
Mm-hmm.
only 6 at the time. And I'm like, they're so young and they deal with these big emotions so young. And then they grow up into teenagers still not knowing how to deal with those emotions. And so that's what I'm saying. The work you do, I think, is amazing because somebody needs to help guide them and help work them through those type of things. And it's so
Yeah.
important because even as adults, we still trying to figure out how to deal with those emotions too. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I feel like it's honestly a journey on a daily basis, but once you have that understanding, like once you have that language, and I think that's why being a teacher is such a powerful piece to the puzzle for me because I
Yeah.
understand how to reverse engineer and how to teach this in a way that they're really going to be able to understand it. Because I want them to be able to actually like visualize and like feel into this. Like there's so many different ways, like even just using their senses for them really to be able to understand this information. But I feel like once they have that understanding and that awareness about how their body actually is like communicating with them, and then when they start to pay attention and learn to think about what they're thinking about, like they're
Yeah.
able to start to create like these reframes in their life, and they're able to step into the role of, as I said, like the creators of their lives and co-create
Hmm.
with themselves and with those emotions, and understand that there's nothing that needs to be fixed. It's actually like a beautiful part of this experience if we can learn how to, like I said in the beginning, like harness that energy for good. So I really
Yeah.
think it's just about shifting, like I said, the language, and that's what I teach them to do. And I have seen really, really incredible results with a lot of the clients that I work with. So
Did you ever
yeah,
see
I do agree.
yourself?
It's so positive.
Yeah. Did you ever see yourself doing this type of work, or did you always think that you're probably just be a teacher forever? You know what I mean? Did you ever see yourself transitioning like this?
Never ever, never ever. And I honestly think it's still to this day is something that kind of shocks me,
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly, truthfully. And there were a lot of like emotionally uncomfortable conversations that led to me
Hmm.
getting to this point as well. So I feel like, leading them on their journey, I'm also constantly co-creating with myself and my own emotions in my own life, because
Yeah.
leaving a full-time teaching career was not an easy decision to make.
Hmm.
However, choosing myself and choosing to challenge myself over the past 4 years, ever since that first initial shift happened, has led to such like profound blessings, but like in such a different way. Like I started to realize that it was really like the feelings that I was after and not so much the external
Yeah. Yeah.
factors. It's more like the experiences and the meeting people, and podcasting and using my voice was something I always wanted to do, for
Yeah.
example. And I just never believed in myself. And it wasn't until I hired a coach and I had somebody kind of like hold that belief for me and pass it to me once I was ready, that I realized that, like, oh my gosh, everybody needs this. Like, it's
Hmm.
so helpful to have that accountability. It's so helpful to have somebody to hold that belief for you if like you're not quite there yet. And I think that's one of the most powerful things like about having a coach or a teacher or anybody in your life who is just like really there to support you and be present with you through those
Yeah.
challenges, because they can literally help you um, like overcome that obstacle and build that resilience so that you know that you're able to face things as they come, because that's literally what life is, right? It's just kind of like
Yeah.
a consistent wave of of challenges.
Of
So
challenges,
knowing
ups
that
and
you
downs.
are, yeah, and knowing
Yeah.
that you are strong enough to face them is how you become empowered.
Yeah. When you work with most of your teens, do you see that confidence is probably one of the biggest key things that a lot of kids probably lack and needs to build on? Because I know you emphasize that true confidence comes from the actions we take. And so do you see that that's probably like one of the key things that you see most kids having a hard time with?
Is the confidence piece?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. And I would say that it's really rooted from what I've seen in feelings of feeling like they're not enough,
Yeah.
feelings of worrying about what other people may think if they show up as themselves or express themselves, share their ideas, just their creativity and like their gifts with the world.
Yeah.
And another really big one I would say too is the fear of actually just like approaching other people to create
Mm.
friendships and to
Yeah.
communicate. Like they don't know where or how to start, and they're very, very fearful of rejection. And again, I don't know if, there was that time period that we had that maybe has something to do with that, right? Like just not socializing as
The COVID
much.
piece. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's
Mm-hmm.
definitely like there's a lack of that like sense of connection and community, which is why it's another piece of the puzzle that I'm currently trying to build, so they have a space where they can have these meaningful conversations with other teens their age.
Do you think social media has a lot to do with that lack of connection? Because everything is so much online now and everyone just feel like they can just be whoever they want to be behind a computer screen or a phone screen, right? But that interaction with each other, and I think that's what social media, to me, I believe social media has caused a lack of human connection,
Hmm.
real human connection. And people do have a hard time connecting and making friends, even as adults sometimes, because of they're not used to actually talking to people. They're used to maybe doing so online. It's so much easier to write something than it is to sit there as someone who looks back at you and actually have a real conversation.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I feel like, and you can let me know, social media kind of plays a big part of that when it comes to the lack of human communication and interactions.
Yeah. And I don't have teens myself, but what I can say is that
Mm-hmm.
I do hear from a lot of my clients that just in terms of just how they feel energetically and how they show up in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And this just pertains to like them being on their devices and being on social media. It's more of just too, I think that can be really draining for them. And a lot of the
Yeah.
teens that I work with, they are, scrolling later at night before bedtime, and they're very honest about that. Even the fact that they would really like to change that habit. But myself personally, I can sit here and say that there have been nights that I've been scrolling and I'm like, damn it, Christy,
I'm
turn
guilty of
your
it.
phone off.
I'm so guilty of it.
So again, you just have to have that awareness and remind yourself, set up those boundaries if you need them.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that it's that a lot of them are talking about just feeling like tired and almost depleted. It's like they've also maybe lost, it's like they're missing that desire to connect, but they've also lost the desire to actually put forth the action to do it. And
Yeah.
I believe personally it's because they're really disconnected from the ways that they want to feel,
Mm-hmm.
and really just honestly truly starting first with that connection with themselves.
Yeah.
So I really believe in order for them to show up in some of these other relationships that they would like to have, friendships and whatever else, like they really need to start filling their cups first. And this is again speaking from the clients that I work with, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, really learning to connect with themselves first, and then being able to show up and having those, yeah, those conversations with others. But yeah, I always imagine just them, sort of even just having like a habit where they take inventory of how much time they're spending online so that they can
Mm-hmm.
start to put more in-person time and socializing and, sports games, like all of the fun things. I used to love bike riding and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in the
Yeah.
summer with my friends. Like I just have so many memories of it not being
Yeah.
on, you know what I mean? Like we weren't on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
I mean, I come from the generation where we absolutely played outside. We were outside. We couldn't stay in the house. Anything in the house is video games the most. So it was definitely a different time. But what are some steps you think that teens can take to start building their confidence and start trusting themselves more?
yeah. So essentially to start trusting yourself more, and this is something
Mm.
that I just recorded for the 100th episode of my Confident Teen
100.
podcast. So I love that you asked me this
Congratulations.
today. Thank you. Yeah. Just under 2 years it took me to get here. So
Listen,
in
me
November it'll
too.
be 2 years.
Me too.
Yeah.
It'd be 2 years for me, and on the 25th, and I just hit 100 episodes 2 weeks ago. I
And
did.
hasn't it
Same
just
thing.
brought so much joy to your life? Like,
Oh
I
my God,
can't
it
imagine not
has.
having my podcast.
It has. It really has. And, people want to start one, and I just tell them, like, it's commitment, though. Like, it's a real commitment to get to 100
Yes.
episodes. It's a real commitment, but it's quite rewarding. I get to interview great people like you. It's always rewarding
Yeah.
for me, to hear other people's stories. And, I love it.
Oh, well, and in terms of all of that too, what podcasting has brought to my life is it
Hmm.
has honestly helped me to trust myself more.
Oh, yeah.
So for my clients, what I am always encouraging them, and you can also listen to this episode because I go into a
Hmm.
little bit more detail, but like the first step in really feeling confident and trusting yourself
Yeah.
is creating that space and that time for you on your calendar. So
Hmm.
making sure, I would say on a daily basis, but as long as you're being consistent with something, I believe that it can really start to like shift and move that needle in the direction that you're really wanting to go. But it starts with creating that time and space for yourself where you're
Yeah.
actually allowing yourself to be in a restorative space. So really just like resting, being calm. And then I would say asking yourself really important questions would be the next step. Asking
Hmm.
yourself really important questions like what kind of goals do you have for yourself? Where do you see yourself in the next X amount of time? Um, and yeah, just really allowing yourself the time and space to figure out like what the desires are and how you actually do want to feel as you show up in your life.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I would recommend, the next step after that is, say you do have a goal, like mine, for example, was to start the podcast, but I was starting to hear all those thoughts come up in my head. Like, you can't do that. Are you kidding
Oh,
me? Like,
yeah.
do you know how
Oh,
much
yeah.
work that's going to be? That's going to be such a commitment. It's going to be such a challenge. It's, all of my fears were coming up. It wasn't just like the technical aspect. It was also the fact of nobody's going to want to listen to you. Nobody's going to want to
God,
hear your
yes.
voice. Like, who do you think you are? You're no expert.
Yeah. The
So there was a
imposter
lot of
syndrome.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of that going on. So this is what will normally happen. We create the space for ourselves. We ask ourselves these important questions. It's like we know what we want, we know how we want to feel, but then we start to hear all those voices creep in. And that's when we
Hmm.
start doubting ourselves, and that's when we would just let everything go, let the dreams go. And so what I like to do for that third step is really lean in. I like to lean in and like I like to hear those voices, and I like
Yeah.
to actually recognize that they are just signaling me. I pay attention to how I'm feeling in my body. I notice my emotions, and I will actually like talk to them. Um, and I
Hmm.
will just allow them to have a voice and a space to breathe. And honestly, whether that's like through journaling or running or doing some kind of activity to like move the energy, I will just allow it to be there. And normally, what happens is when I lean into that and I do the deeper work, I am then able to fully commit and take action, which is step 4. So
Yeah.
once you
Yeah.
kind of feel that, that pressure has been released, that's when you lean in and you take the leap. And that's where that trust is built. And then the confidence builds itself as well if you keep rinsing and repeating this process.
I like the fact that you said that you lean into those feelings and acknowledge them, because I've just had this conversation with a friend, and I said, you know what, I've been feeling like really weird lately, and I couldn't really explain it. But I said to her, I said, you know what? No, a lot of times I would just ignore it. I'm like, okay, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'll be okay. Just like weird and emotional, but then I realized, okay, it must be the perimenopause. It could be that, right? But I'm like, even with that, because you said that, I said to her, so you know what? I'm going to acknowledge the fact that I actually feel this, and that I'm not going to just push it away and try to act like it's not really happening to me. And when I decided to do that, then I began to kind of understand. That's when, kind of understand, okay, this could be where you are right now. You're about to be 50. You could just be dealing with that. I mean, I don't know if it's a midlife crisis kind of thing, or is it just a perimenopause? You go through all these different emotions, your body's changing. But I would just push them away. So I'm really glad you said that you lean into them and you tell them to acknowledge those things are there, because it's okay to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now. Like, I even had to
Yeah.
express that to my husband, because he's kind of like, what's wrong with you? And I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Sometimes I'm
feeling
like,
weird.
I don't know either. Yeah. The weird space. I call it like the messy middle. I'm like, where am I right now? I'm not really sure.
Yes.
But I totally agree with you and I totally understand, because I do feel like if I take action on
Hmm.
something, a goal, but I don't lean into those feelings first and I just push
Yeah.
them aside and I'm just like, screw it, I'm going for it anyway.
Yeah.
Um, it will still build my confidence muscles in a sense, but there is
Hmm.
something that happens differently when you really do put that added step in, which is leaning in. So
Yeah.
not just like forcing your body into something, but actually allowing it the space just to express why it's feeling the resistance it's feeling. And just allowing that to be heard. And then when you lean in, it's almost like your physical body, your mind, everything's coming together. And that's what really creates that self-trust, because your mind and your body are starting to work in
Yes.
alignment with how you want to feel.
Yeah. Yeah. They are definitely aligned on that. How do you balance? Because I know you have a lot going on. You're a mom, you got the 2 kids running around, being a mom, wife, you got the business, podcast business. So how do you find balance? I like to ask this to a lot of my entrepreneurs because we get so busy at time, and balance is so important part of trying to juggle life in business as well. So how do you find balance?
I would say 3 things are coming up for me right now. I'm going to see if I can remember all 3 of them by the time I'm done this. So the first one is staying consistent with some of the habits that I have put in place over the last 4 years. And one of those in particular is like my Sunday evening planning
Mhm.
session that I have
Oh,
with
yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Starts with my intention and how I want to feel for the week, because I'm all about my energy. Um, so yeah, just essentially having that planning session for my business, like personal and professional, like everything counts. And then the second thing would be to actually check in with all of those energies, which is something that I teach my clients to do as well. So it's like the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energies, and just
Mhm.
seeing, where I'm at in all of those buckets and areas of my life, and anything that needs to be, adjusted as I move into the week, because I really do feel that that helps me to fully show up to the tasks,
Yeah.
the things on my to-do list that I always, tend to resist as well. So that's something that really helps me. And honestly, sometimes it comes back to just like today, I'm literally have like my jug of water here, like my
Yeah.
physical vessel is like screaming at me to stop drinking so many teas and just to have some more water today. So that's what we're
Yeah.
working on. Um, and then the third and final thing was I hired help.
Oh,
And I resisted
yes.
doing that for so long. And honestly, I think it comes back to just another fear of, fearing, what if I fail? What if this doesn't work out?
Yes.
What if people don't resonate with my message? What if they don't understand the type of, work I'm showing up to now teach in this world? And yeah, so fear in investing in myself. But I can honestly say that ever since I did, it has opened up the possibilities for me,
Yeah.
because I'm able to find and connect with more people like yourself. And there are so many tasks that have been taken off of my list that it's actually buying back my time and energy. And so I have more energy to put into the things that I feel like I'm best at.
Yeah.
So,
Because a lot of time as entrepreneurs, we would get into that solo mindset where we don't want to share our baby with nobody. Right. And that's the
mm-hmm.
thing that kind of will hold us back, because I struggled with that too for a while. And I was like, I don't know if I want to give this over to someone to handle, because they might not really do it like I do it. But since I've done it too, it's been like, I don't have to do all the little tasks that have to go with this podcasting and everything else. Somebody else can handle that. So I think that works a lot. And you said something about fear, and I was about to jump on that question with you too. So I know like a lot of teenagers struggle with fear of failure, fear of judgment. What steps, or what maybe one strategy or advice that you can give that kind of can help them face that fear and take an action towards their goals if they're afraid to take that step?
I love this question. So, whenever fear shows up and you can like feel that, I normally feel
Yeah.
fear in my chest. So the first thing I would say again, and this is just to practice daily, because
Yeah.
being aware is like that first and most important step. So it's just being aware of how that energy actually feels and noticing where it is in your body. And then once you identify what it is, the next step is you want to ask it like why it's here, what it's trying to tell
Mm-hmm.
you. And you can journal this out. You can do this. Like I'm at the point now where I will do this on the fly, like while I'm out,
Yeah.
like if it all of a sudden shows up in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just asking it why it's here, what it needs from you, what it's trying to tell you or signal you, and then just asking it what it needs in order to feel safe to leave your body. And generally
Mm.
speaking, it's like those first thoughts that come to mind. is really what you're searching for. Like if it tells you it needs a glass of water to,
Yeah.
feel better, to help it to like soothe itself,
Yeah.
maybe it's a run, maybe it's a walk, maybe it's to call a friend, maybe it's, the list goes on and on. It's honestly about you understanding that you have all of the answers that you need inside of you. It's sometimes you just have to, as I said, create that space, become aware, create that space, and actually offer yourself that time to really connect. Because I feel a lot of the times that we have these emotions show up,
Yeah.
fear, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, all the things, because our
Yeah.
body is trying to signal us that we're not paying attention, we're not listening.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So that would definitely be the first thing, would just be to, just take the space. It doesn't have to be anything big or extravagant or something that's going to take a ton of time. Um, but yeah, just listen, ask the questions that you need to, why it's here, and then what it needs to feel safe in order to leave your body or to come along for the ride, because you're still going to take the action and it's just going to be alongside you to co-create with you. The energy of fear, actually, I have to say, is maybe one of my favorites. And I do not say that lightly, but it's
Yeah.
like this excitedness. And I'll just share this really quickly because it's happening this Sunday. So I am running a full marathon this
Oh
coming Sunday. So
wow.
October 20th. Yeah, I'm doing the Detroit and Windsor full marathon. So it's like an international. So you go like across the border, we go over the bridge and then under the tunnel. So I've done
Wow.
the half before in my life. Not when I would consider myself like to be like, I wasn't really running and training a lot back then. For this one, I really started running after I had my kids.
Yeah.
And during the same span of time when the big shifts were happening, because I needed something to allow myself to feel free from just
Yeah.
all of the chaos that I felt
Yeah.
I wasn't able
Yeah.
to quite control yet. So running became like everything to me. So it's just interesting. 4 years later, I am officially running a
A
full
full
marathon,
marathon.
but
How many miles is
fear
a full
is
marathon again?
26.2.
26. I thought it was 25. Okay. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
So
That's
I'm having this
exciting.
conversation with you today, but I'm telling you all day long, I've been trying to just focus on this because my mind is really giving me a run for my money this week already, just in the final 5 days leading up to this event, because it's
Yeah.
something that I've never done before. I definitely know that it's going to challenge me. And so I think the fear of failure is what is showing up. Um,
Yeah.
Pretty
I
strong
know.
this week, but it's interesting to co-create with that and try to shift that energy for good, right?
Yeah,
And really feeling that
definitely.
excitement of how amazing it's going to feel when I'm able to prove to this fear that like I am capable and I can do this.
I was just going to talk about, because I know you talk about being brave and telling teens to be brave. So is this your moment running this marathon? Is this you stepping up there, being brave against that thing?
Yeah.
Showing your
So
bravery.
I've essentially, as like all of this in the past 4 years has literally grown organically, but I do feel like I have this sense like for my teen self. And this
Hmm.
is like one of like the central questions of my podcast. I ask it to every guest who comes on is if you could speak to your teen self, what would they need to hear?
Yeah.
So I am constantly showing up in my life today to, I don't know if it's like reparent is the right word, but I'm trying to be a like cheerleader for my teen self and proving to her that, maybe the things that we didn't think we could do back then, we are capable of now. So,
Yes. That is an
yeah.
awesome question. I love it. I love the marathon. Oh
Do
my
you want to answer the
God.
question? If you could
What
speak to your teen self, what would she need to hear?
I think if I could speak to my teen self, I would tell her that your skin color doesn't define you. Your darkness doesn't define you. As a kid growing up, I was teased a lot because of my skin color because I was dark. I'm dark, and I lived in Florida, so I was even like darker in that sun. And I would tell her that she's beautiful. Your skin, the darkness is gorgeous and it doesn't define you. You're strong. I would tell her that. I really would, because I dealt with a lot of that growing up, and a lot of it kind of was depicted in like society knew, those kind of that era where
100%.
your dark skin wasn't beautiful really. And I will go back and tell her that she's beautiful and that your dark skin does not define you.
I
Most
cannot tell you
definitely.
how much I appreciate that answer. This is something that comes up so often
Hmm.
with the teens that I work with is just their self-image and
Yeah.
what
Yep.
their definition of beauty maybe actually is and how distorted it can be.
Hmm.
Um, So yeah, that was definitely an answer that I know a lot of people would need to hear.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because like I said, back then we didn't have tools and you weren't told that you're beautiful. You know what I mean? That your skin color is gorgeous, you're beautiful like as much as it is now today. Back then we
Mm-hmm.
really dealt with our identity issues and we didn't know how to deal with it. So we just kind of like brushed them off and try to act like they weren't there when they really was. And I'm like you, I did a lot of self-work too. And so part of that self-work was me, because at first it's like, have you had any childhood trauma? And I was like, no, I never had any childhood trauma. And then it was like, no, I really want you to think about it. Don't just answer it. Really think about your childhood. And when I began to think about childhood, I started bringing up these feelings of just like, just not feeling beautiful, not fitting in and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, I really did have some trauma. I just didn't know that that's what it was until
Mm-hmm.
they really start using that term a lot more now. And I was like, I really did. I really did because I struggled a lot with my skin color because it wasn't depicted as beautiful. So that's what
Yeah.
I struggled with. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's so much power in that reflection, not
Mm-hmm.
just for yourself, but then you're able to help other people by sharing that so that they feel like, oh my gosh, me too. Right.
Yes.
And I think that's the
Yes.
power of like community. And that's also where I feel like the connection is really missing. So I am so appreciative to people like you who have podcasts
Mm.
as well,
Yes.
that are just like offering this space for people to be able to hear these conversations that are just like vulnerable and
Exactly.
real. It's so
Yeah.
important.
It is. I'm almost crying off that answer in a little bit. Like I told you, I'm really emotional right now. Kristi,
Yeah.
I told you that.
This is
So
this is what I do to my guests on my podcast. Isn't that terrible?
it's terrible. You make everybody cry. Think about it. We'll
It's
all
just
be
the
in
energy.
tears. Yes,
I
we
love
all
it.
be in tears.
It brings me
Um,
joy.
yeah, it was something I recognized, and I'm glad I did, and I'm able to speak about it without getting
Hmm.
emotional, like I used to. But it took me a while to build up my confidence. That's why I know confidence is so important. Just in confidence in who I am, what I look like, and everything, my body, everything. And I still tell people confidence doesn't come. It doesn't just automatically come with age. It's something you continuously work on. Right? You
Yeah.
have to continuously work on things because you're going to be faced with different things as you get older. And you have to still build your confidence even as you get older. You really do. You
Yeah,
really do.
exactly.
So tell me this. What are you excited about next? Because I know we're going to have to bring the podcast to a close soon. What are you excited about next? What's going on with you? What's going on with the business? How's it all going? The podcast, everything.
Yeah, you know what? I'm really excited just for some more of the meaningful conversations that are coming to the podcast. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
it's brought me so much joy,
Yeah,
being able to, yeah, just meet the people that I have, create the connections that I've created. Like podcasting is really just such a blessing. So
it
that would
is.
probably be the main thing. I also just launched my course though.
Oh,
So
cool.
this finally like has all come together. After I left the classroom, I was kind of doing like a mix of tutoring and life coaching together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still able to do that, but really over the last year, it's been like bringing together like all the key areas that I know have significantly helped me, things that I've learned and taken from so many different areas.
Yeah.
um yeah, and really being able to like bring this information and deliver it to teens. So my course is called Bright Like a Diamond, Grounded in
Oh,
Who You Are. Yeah, and I lead teens through the four key areas, which are the ones that I spoke of, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy, and how when you really, really tap into this part of who you are, this is like the 90%, like the 10% strategy, we can get into that, but 90% of, how you want to feel and show up in your life has to do with your energy.
oh yeah.
And being able to really harness that power for good is what I teach them. And so that mixed with some essential life skills,
Yeah.
yeah, really just to help them to step into adulthood and feel confident. So I'm excited about the new teens that are coming my way for this project.
For sure. What's one advice before we close? What's one advice that you can give parents to maybe help their teen or teens in helping them build their confidence?
So this is something that I say at the end of my podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that I've been saying to myself for a really long time now. So I'm always offering it to people, if it feels aligned and if it resonates. But I've been telling myself for the past 4 years to be brave,
Yeah.
trust yourself, and take action. So I'm a really big fan of affirmations. And again, I don't feel like it has to be anything crazy. I've literally been saying the same one to myself for the last 4 years. It's just
Yeah.
that reminder. It's that constant reminder of where I started, how the journey has progressed and the person that I am becoming, like along that process, and how it's really about being present with each moment. That is the most important, because that's literally what life is. It's, you know what I mean? Like the destination, like you're here right now, just be where
Yeah.
you are and really enjoy what you have in your life.
Yep.
And yeah, I would say be brave, trust yourself, take action. And that really comes down to what we were talking about earlier, just being brave enough to create that time and space to ask yourself important questions. Trust that you can lean into your emotions because they are there to support you. And then, while take
Yeah.
action is a given, that's when you take the leap, you make the phone call, you ask the
Yeah.
important question, you have the emotional, uncomfortable conversation, you go for the run, you ask the person to be I don't know, so many different things,
Yes,
right?
so many different things. Yeah.
But yeah, essentially that. Just keep reminding yourself that you are capable, because you are.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Kristi. This has been such a good conversation. Like it really has. And like I said, I think the work you do is important, especially because teenagers are our next generation of leaders. And whatever support that we can give them to be the best that they can going forward, I think is important work. So you're definitely doing some important work. All teachers do anyway. You just turn into a different form. The teachers do absolutely amazing work. And during COVID, like you said, during that time, showed me how much more I appreciate teachers, because I cannot do that job. I just couldn't. I'm gonna tell you, third grade math almost killed me. It almost took me out. Okay.
We have so much more in common than I think like we started this conversation before you hit record with our sons, then with our
Yes.
dogs, and now you
Yes.
tell me that grade 3 math was also like your
Oh
biggest.
my
Yeah,
God.
for me too.
Yes.
For me too. I'm
It
like
almost took
hand
me out.
raised over here. Yeah.
Oh my God. All right, guys. I am Shawnee Sanders. This is the Girl Take No podcast, and I will talk to you next time.